Hey everybody, it is Rolly, and today my hair is wet. Always about the hair. This curly, crazy hair. So today is day 3 of the Share Your Heart, Share Your Work challenge. And so today's prompts are about behind the scene. So today I have taken you back into my office space. And so still trying to find ways to be able to make it so that it's actually more conducive. I've had to change my space, so that is where things are at. And one of the things that I need to do is figure out more lighting. Right now I actually have my phone because it is a little bit more not as bright outside, and so the window's over off to the side. So this is my space. This is where I'm coming to you live. And so I did have an office downstairs, and there were some things that were changed, and because some things were happening in our household, and so rather than change everything back, and we just kind of said, okay, this is where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be doing. So this is my space. Usually I have my my dog, so I'm not sure where he is. He must be sleeping with my son, because my son's still sleeping this morning. And so that is so he's normally up here, and I try and get him in here before, and sometimes I have to open the door to let him in so that he can actually jump up on his bed and have a nap while I'm actually working. And so that is so this is my space. This is my behind the scenes space. And so this is where I am most of the time. And so for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rolly Allaire. My spirit name is Gigudo Migwin Kwe, and that stands for Talking Feather Woman. And so I am a holistic trauma coach, who a spirit flame keeper and a soul healer. And so I work with women who have experienced trauma, who by using my 18 years experience in psychotherapy, and I combine that with some holistic approaches. And so so that's who I am. And so for those of you who are just joining me, thank you so much for joining. And if you're catching the replay, then #replay. I'd really love to know that you are actually on. Really love to be able to hear more from you. So that would be really wonderful. So, and for those of you who are jumping on now, then I'd love to hear some of the discussions. And so one of the things that this Share Your Work, Share Your Heart, Share Your Work challenge that Allison has put out is that she gives us prompts. And so for 10 days, she's giving us prompts as to what it is to talk about when we're actually coming on live on our pages. And so I decided to take up the challenge. So although I do come on live, I get really nervous, and I get and like everybody, right? So we get nervous and we get worried about whether or not we're going to like mumble our words or jumble the way we're saying things. And so I thought, what better way of being able to practice being live and putting myself, showing that vulnerable side of me on Facebook Lives. So I know that I get a lot of feedback with people that say, oh yeah, you're just so natural. And I'm not. I'm really not. I'm very nervous. I get very scared. I'm very hair subconscious. And so, and then my tongue gets tied periodically, like it just did, right? So it's like, oh no, now that's on live for the whole world to see. And so, but our life is live, and so we don't put our things on pause. We don't put our lives on pause when we're having a conversation with someone. And so when I'm actually having a face-to-face session, whether it's virtual or in person, our conversations just flow, and like sometimes we get stuck on a word and we forget our words, or that we get jumbled on things. And so it's natural, but because we put a camera in front of us, we kind of go, oh no, what are we going to do? Right? So that is, so that's one of the reasons why I decided that I was actually going to take this challenge. And so, And so some of the prompts, so yesterday's prompts were really challenging for me. Today it's about behind the scenes. So it's about like, where am I? Where is my space? What is it that I'm doing? So most of the time I actually work in this space. This is typically where it is that I work. But I also sometimes work, and not so much now, but this summer I was actually working outside. So I would actually be set up outside in front of my lilac bush for the most part. And but now it's fall, so it's a little bit chillier. Later afternoons, if it's not too cool from the shade, because we get shaded from the trees, then I'm outside, but it's definitely too cool for me in the morning. And so the other thing that I do is that I will sometimes work from my phone, so long as I have data access. So not like last weekend when we did the Nurture Your Inner Child retreat out at Nature's Harmony in Mattawa. There's like zero service. So like there's no cell service, there's no data. So it's like completely off the grid, which was really, it was really nice to be able to just be able to be disconnected and to be able to have that time. And so, although sometimes it's a little bit more challenging because like I'm so used to being on my devices, I'm so used to being on and responding to messages and to emails, and when I have a thought then I post it or I share it, and so like that kind of makes things a little bit more challenging when there is no data or internet connections. And or sometimes it kind of gets like a little bit little sketchy, like it kind of jumps in and jumps out. Hi Amanda, how are you? And so one of the other things that that Allison has prompted us to talk about is our tools. So like I talked about my computer, I talked about my phone, I use my laptop or my tablet, so like there's a lot of different things. And so, but in terms of tools of what it is that I do when I'm actually working with people is that I actually have some other tools. So I use Zoom. I use Zoom a lot to be able to have my meetings. So whether I'm having professional meetings or I'm having meetings with my clients, then I use Zoom. And Zoom allows me to be able to have that face-to-face contact. So not necessary, I can do it over the phone. So if somebody is like, oh, well, I really can't get on, then I will do it over the phone. However, I try and do it through Zoom because then it gives us that face-to-face. It allows us to be able to see each other and allows us to be able to have that that human interaction, right? So doing virtual work makes things a little bit more challenging in the sense of connection, but it can still be done over the phone. It can still be done through chatting, but I prefer the connection back to face-to-face. So like that is one of the things that I do. One of the other tools that I've started using is Voxer. So it's like a it's an app that is on your phone where you can actually use the technology to be able to do like real-time chatting back and forth. And so that was and that's been more and more popular with a lot of the coaches. And so, and I was using it with one of my coaches, and so that was where I kind of got familiar with it. And so now I use that with my clients as well, as opposed to just the chatting back and forth, like the typing back and forth. So long as you're in a situation or a position where you can actually verbally speak, then that chatting back and forth, and it's in real time. So long as both people are actually there, it's like a walkie-talkie. So it's actually really cool. The other things that I use, so like I use Zoom, I use so it's virtual meetings a lot of, so virtual meetings, virtual sessions, and I do that a lot. And I do that because I don't then have to have a physical space where I actually need to go to, so I can actually work wherever it is that I am. And the reason why that's really important for me is that I actually attend all of my dad's medical appointments. And so to physically go to a building and to have sessions physically at a building, then that makes things a little bit more challenging because I have to physically be there. I have to physically leave my home and go there. Whereas this here, I can do these sessions from, I can do my sessions from a motel room if I need to. So like if Dad and I are on the road, I can actually just hop on a call either through my phone or through the complete computer, and I'm able to do that. And it also allows my schedule to be more flexible. So I can adjust my schedule based on time zones. So the fact that I actually work virtually, there are people that I actually connect with in different parts of the world. And so depending on where they're from and our time zones, then sometimes I will actually set up appointment times that are specific to their time zone. So that way it'll be times that are more conducive to their daytime as opposed to my daytime, which is fine because, again, I can adjust my schedule. So if I need to sleep in, then I can, and if I need to stay up later, then I can. So these are all different things from working from a world-based industry that it allows me to be able to do that. So so that's like one of the cool things for being able to do my work from home and why I enjoy being able to do it virtually. The other part of why I enjoy doing this virtually is that I actually get to meet people that are in Italy. I get to meet people that are in Australia, and at some point I will actually get to physically meet some of these people, because that is going to Australia is definitely one of my things that on my bucket list. And the other place that I really would like to be able to go is to Egypt. I'd love to be able to go to Italy and to France. And so these are different places that that at some point. So it's nice to be able to get to know some of the people that are there and being able to have that connection. So I really like doing the virtual, but I also very much like being able to do the physical. So I like being able to still have my physical groups. So I have my Inner Goddess Circle, which is on Thursday evenings, is physically here. And I also have my moon medicine circles, and so that is our full moon dancing circle. And so again, that's another physical one. And then of course the retreats, right? So the retreats and some of the physical workshops. So so we have our women's wellness workshops that are starting on the first Saturday of every month, which is a co-facilitation program that I'm actually going to be working with other women. And not necessarily women. They can be, right now, the 9 people that we have are all women, but they don't necessarily need to be women practitioners, but they have, but in this particular case for the next 9 months, there are physical, they are only women. So, but those are physical, so those are in-person sessions. And so one of my challenges for doing the work that I'm doing is that it sometimes becomes difficult to be able to market, because some people are not sure, is that a physical thing? Can I physically go there? And is that possible, or is it virtual, and is that going to work? And how do those things kind of work? And so that part there is, that's one of my challenges, but marketing is one of my challenges. So I don't do so great in the marketing world. And so always trying to learn more marketing, always connecting with other people who can actually help me with marketing. And so that is, that's not my cup of tea. Give me a client, give me somebody who's actually having some difficulties in their life, and I can handle that. But give me the marketing aspects, and it's like, what am I supposed to do now? So I get a lot of mishmash of different things in terms of marketing. So that is, so that's definitely a challenge for me, as opposed to having a, and I guess you still need to market with having a sign on the door, but it's, but on the virtual marketing part is a little bit more challenging. So that's definitely one of my challenges of being able to do what it is that I do is in the online world. And so one of the other tools that I actually use that I really love using is that I actually use when I'm actually having a session with a client, is that I actually will use the medicine wheel. And that's because I actually really take a holistic approach to the way that things are happening in our lives. We are not just one parts of us. And so when I've worked for different agencies, that was always one of my challenges, because if I was working in addictions, then I wasn't supposed to be working on mental health. And when I was working on mental health, then I wasn't supposed to be working on addictions, because that's not what we're actually funded for. If we're working on somebody who's I'm dealing with somebody's mental health and there's domestic violence, well then I'm supposed to refer them to somebody else. And so but the situations and in terms of my experiences is that these are things that I actually am able and qualified for. Like if I wasn't qualified for them, then that would be a different story. Because you do need to see your scope of practice, and that's one of the things that I see that I've seen with different practitioners, or especially on the online world, is that I've seen people that are outside of their scope of practice, and that alarms me, because like if it's outside of your scope of practice, so like for example, although I have experience with addictions, gambling is not, I don't have that experience, and I don't have, and so although that it's still an addiction, it's a different kind of addiction. Somebody who has a sexual addiction, for example, that is not, that's not within my scope of practice. There are people that are specialized in being able to work with that. And so being able to stay within your own lane in terms of your scope of practice. Now, different story if you've actually had that experience or that training or that kind of thing where you can actually work through that with the person. But sometimes I see people who don't have that scope of practice that kind of jump in, and it can actually do more harm than good. And so those are some of the challenges that I see, is that, but not for me in terms of, it's not my challenge, it is a challenge that I see with, within working on the online community. And so, because one of the things that I have, and not necessarily, yeah, no, that I have learned, but that it's like really important for you to be able to stay within your scope of practice, because if you don't, then you really can do more harm than good, and that is something that is extremely important. And so the other part of things and in my work is that sometimes people will do, some people have magical thinking, right? So like if I have if I have a magical wand, then things are actually going to get better, and it's all going to be better just because I've had one sessions or just because I've had one program. And so when we're actually dealing with things, we've been building these things for a long time. And so even in all of the years experience that I've had clients that are like, oh no, they can't help me. They didn't do the things that they needed to be doing, but they didn't do the work. And that's something that is really important for us to be able to remember, is that we need to do the work. So although we are working with somebody, we still need to do the work in order for things to get better. So I can take all the marketing in the world, but if I don't do the work in terms of being able to share in using the marketing strategies that have been given, then I'm not going to get any further. And so those are things that are like really important. And so it's the same thing as but I can't blame my coach. I can't blame the person who taught me or that was working with me if I'm not doing the work. So if I'm not taking the steps that I need to be taking, different story if that is tasks to them, so that if that's their responsibility and they're supposed to be doing things, then obviously I can blame them if the things didn't get done. But in terms of the things that I need to be doing, if I don't do that, then I'm not going to get any further. And that's the same as when I'm actually working with my clients. And so those are things that are like super, super important for us to be able to remember when we're actually working with people. And so so now I've told you guys all about me, and I've kind of gone off on a completely different tangent in terms of scope of practice, because that wasn't even one of the prompts. So so when I was talking at the beginning of this challenge and I said, oh, I go online and I like don't even know what it is that I'm supposed to say, but I talk a lot, so that is not a challenge. That is not my challenge of not being able to have things to say, because I always have things to say. And so but it's that focused, right? So like being on live is that fear, and so for those of you who are watching that are fellow entrepreneurs, you know what it is that I'm talking about in terms of that, like spotlight, like now I have to speak. And so so like that is something that is super, super important for us to be able to do. But even in our own lives, right? So like we are on the hot seat when we are experiencing our lives. And so that is something that is going on. So more about you. So I wanted to ask you guys to, so if you guys are catching the replay, then hashtag replay, but also I want to know, what is it that you guys do? What do you guys do? And what tools do you guys use? So like whether you guys are working or you guys are an entrepreneur, actually, even an entrepreneur is working, but if you're working for someone else or you're an entrepreneur, then I want to know, what do you guys do? What do you guys do for a living? What kind of things do you guys experience? And what are some of the tools that you guys use? And so I'd love to hear in the comments. So I will definitely come back to the comments. So every comment that is made, then I will definitely be back on. So love that you guys, for some of you that have joined me, and looking forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. Bye for now.